You ever hear a story that sounds so unbelievable, so strange, that even before it ends, your mind is already trying to decide whether to believe it or not? This is one of those stories. Imagine this: a man completely cut off from the world. No phones, no internet, no rescue in sight, just an empty stretch of land surrounded by endless water. A deserted island. And not just that, he wasn't alone. There were 5 women with him, all of them pregnant, and for 7 years, no one came. Now, before you rush to conclusions, before your mind starts filling in the gaps with assumptions, just stay with me, because nothing about this story goes the way you think it will. It started with a journey that was never meant to go wrong. The man, his name was Daniel, was not a thrill-seeker or some survival expert. He was just an ordinary man, the kind of person you wouldn't notice twice in a crowded place. Quiet, observant, and honestly, a bit unlucky in life. He boarded that boat thinking it was just another trip. A routine passage across waters that thousands had crossed before. But sometimes, life doesn't ask for permission before it changes everything. The storm came out of nowhere. At first, it was just wind, then waves, then chaos, people screaming, the boat tilting, water rushing in faster than anyone could react. Daniel remembered grabbing onto something. He never even knew what it was. The last thing he saw before everything went black was lightning tearing the sky apart. When he woke up, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. He was lying on sand, his body aching, his mouth dry, his head spinning. For a moment, he thought maybe he had died. But then he heard something. A voice, weak, trembling, human. He wasn't alone. One by one, he found them. 5 women scattered along the shore, each barely conscious, each holding on to life by a thread. And as the hours passed, as they slowly regained strength, as they began to understand where they were, another realization hit him. They were all pregnant. Different stages, different conditions, but all carrying life inside them. That was the moment everything changed, because survival was no longer just about staying alive. It was about protecting lives that hadn't even entered the world yet. The first few days were chaos. No food, no clean water, no shelter. Just fear. Real, raw fear. They didn't know if rescue was coming. They didn't know how long they had. And worst of all, they didn't know if they could even survive a week. Daniel had never been a leader, but in moments like that, someone has to step up. And somehow, it became him. Not because he was the strongest, not because he was the smartest, but because he was the only one who didn't freeze. He started small, finding fresh water, breaking coconuts, building a rough shelter from whatever the island gave them. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even safe. But it was something. And sometimes, something is all you need to keep going. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And slowly, they adapted. The island that once felt like a prison started to feel like a strange kind of home. But the real challenge hadn't even begun yet. The first baby came during a storm. There was no hospital, no doctor, no equipment, just panic. The woman was in pain, screaming, terrified. And Daniel, he had no idea what to do. But he didn't run. He didn't give up. He stayed. He listened. He did what he could, even when he didn't know if it was enough. And somehow, against all odds, the baby survived. That moment changed everything, because it proved something. They could do this, not perfectly, not easily, but they could survive. One by one, the others gave birth. Each time was different. Each time was dangerous. Each time felt like it could be the end. But every time, they made it through. And with every child that came into the world, something inside that group shifted. They were no longer just survivors. They were a family. 7 years. Think about that. 7 birthdays that no one else saw. 7 years of building, struggling, adapting. The children grew. They laughed. They played. They didn't even know what the outside world looked like. To them, the island was everything. But for Daniel, the weight never left. Because every single day, he carried a question in his mind. What happens if I fail them? What happens if one mistake costs everything? He worked harder than anyone. Fishing, building, protecting, teaching. He became something he never thought he could be. A protector, a provider, a father figure, not by blood, but by responsibility. And the women, they changed too. They became stronger, more resilient. They learned things they never imagined they'd need to know. Together, they built something out of nothing. But nothing lasts forever. One morning, everything changed. A sound, distant at first, then louder, then undeniable. A helicopter. For a moment, no one moved. Because after 7 years, hope feels dangerous. What if it's not real? What if it disappears? But it didn't. It got closer, and closer, and closer, until finally, they were seen. Rescue had come. You'd think that would be the happiest moment of their lives. And in many ways, it was. Tears, laughter, relief. But also, something else, fear. Because leaving that island meant leaving the only life some of them had ever known. The children didn't understand. Why were they leaving home? Why were strangers taking them away? And Daniel, for the first time in years, he didn't know what to do. Because out there, in the real world, he wasn't needed the same way. Out there, things were different. When they finally returned, the world didn't know what to make of them. Their story spread fast. People were shocked, curious, judgmental. Everyone had an opinion, but no one truly understood. Because survival like that changes you in ways words can't explain. Daniel tried to go back to a normal life. But normal didn't feel normal anymore. Silence felt strange. Comfort felt unfamiliar. And the responsibility he once carried was suddenly gone. But one thing never changed: the bond they built. Because some connections aren't broken by time or distance. They had faced something together that most people would never understand. And that kind of experience stays with you forever. So what did he do next? He didn't chase fame. He didn't try to prove anything to anyone. He simply stayed connected to the people who mattered. Because in the end, it was never about the island. It was about the people. And the choices made when everything was on the line. And maybe that's the part that really breaks people when they hear this story. Not the survival, not the struggle, but the realization that an ordinary person, in the right moment, can become everything others need to survive. And most of us will never know what we're capable of until life leaves us no other choice.